complex 70-year history of the Ku Klux Klan's post-World War II resurgence. We're going to unpack their violent push and pull with the civil rights movement and explore how this organization has continually mutated to survive in the modern era. We're looking strictly at the historical data, the pivotal events, and the shifting tactics of America's oldest racist terrorist group. Let's get right into it.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the post-war resurgence, the era of impunity and radical terror, the federal crackdown, how the Klan was actually bankrupted, and finally, the new face of hate.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the post-war resurgence.
Picture the 1950s. We're talking booming American prosperity, right? The U.S. is projecting this triumphant global symbol of liberty. But, well, that actually masked an old, incredibly volatile tension right beneath the surface. Down in the American South, the doors to this newfound prosperity were quite literally bolted shut for African Americans. They were legally denied access to well-paid jobs, to quality health care, and honestly, to basic human dignity.
To really grasp the heavy daily weight of these indignities, just consider this. In cities like Birmingham, parents literally had to trace their kids' feet on pieces of paper before they went shopping. Why? Because black families were legally banned from trying on shoes in department stores. It's wild to think about. It wasn't just about separate water fountains, you know? It was this deeply ingrained systemic humiliation woven into absolutely everyday life.
Now, what's really interesting here is that the invisible empire had actually kind of faded away after the 1920s. But the match that lit the powder keg again came on May 17, 1954. That's when the Supreme Court completely wobbled the system by declaring public school segregation unconstitutional. And the South? They were absolutely enraged. Thousands of supporters threw their hoods right back on with a terrifying new mandate to, quote, defend white supremacy by any and all means.
So, that brings us to Section 2, Impunity and Radical Terror.
This whole era was defined by this massive, stark push and pull. On one hand, you have the civil rights movement actively meeting systemic hatred with nonviolent disobedience. Think about Martin Luther King Jr. sharing his dream with 300,000 marchers in Washington back in '63, a huge, beautiful display of peaceful demand for equality. But the Klan's response to that peaceful progress? It was just immediate, sheer radicalization. And we really need to pause and look at the devastating human cost of that radicalization. Just 2 weeks after MLK's march, a bomb tore through the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, which, tragically, earned the city the dark nickname Bombingham. That blast killed 4 young girls, Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Denise McNair, who were just there attending catechism. And then, the very next year, during the 1964 Freedom Summer, 3 activists, Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Schwerner, disappeared in Mississippi. They were lured into a trap, murdered, and buried in an earthen dam by a local police force that had been completely infiltrated by the Klan. So you're probably wondering, how on earth did they get away with this? Well, a culture of impunity flourished right from the very top of federal law enforcement. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover actively stalled justice. Even when they identified suspects, Hoover just flat-out refused to forward the files to prosecutors. The source materials show us that Hoover viewed civil rights activists as these dangerous communists, while he literally referred to Klan members as patriotic white people. And because of that stance, killers served maybe a few months for minor charges, or local white juries just refused to convict them at all.
Okay, let's move on to Section 3, the federal crackdown.
You see, the Klan's unchecked brutality eventually totally backfired on them. The sheer horror of these events ended up disgusting even conservative white Americans. So to break the Klan's grip, the federal government came in with this massive 1-2 punch. First, President Lyndon Johnson pushed through landmark legislation, the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, which legally secured full citizenship for African Americans. Second, the FBI completely changed its tune and launched this shadow war called COINTELPRO. This counterintelligence program used what our sources actually call cartoonish but incredibly effective psychological tactics. Agents sent anonymous letters and postcards to sow deep paranoia, and they actively exposed Klan leaders' misdeeds to their own members. It was all about destroying the organization from the inside out.
Now let me tell you, the result of those combined efforts was absolutely staggering. By the early 1970s, Klan membership had plummeted by 70%. 70%. The federal pressure had successfully fractured the invisible empire.
Which leads us to Section 4, bankrupting the Klan. But here's the thing, the true killing blow to the organized empire wasn't actually federal, it was legal. While the FBI was fracturing the group, regular citizens found a totally new way to fight back. Back in 1981, a 19-year-old named Michael Donald was brutally murdered in Mobile, Alabama, while his mother, Beulah Donald, alongside the Southern Poverty Law Center, pioneered this completely new blueprint for fighting domestic terror. Instead of just relying on the criminal courts, they filed a groundbreaking civil lawsuit directly against the overarching organization, the United Klans of America. And the result was a real game-changer. The jury awarded Beulah Donald a $7 million verdict. That's a sum that completely and utterly bankrupted the organization. The United Klans of America were forced to literally hand over the deed to their national headquarters just to pay the damages. It was a massive, massive financial and structural defeat.
Now let's look at our final chapter, Section 5, the new face of hate.
So the Klan's central structure was bankrupt, sure, but the ideology definitely wasn't dead. Survival for the group meant adaptation. Heading into the 1980s, they actually traded their traditional white robes for business suits. Leaders like David Duke tried to give the Klan this shiny, respectable front. During this same time, they also started aligning with neo-Nazis, all united by these anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about a Zionist-occupied government, or ZOG. But maybe the most dangerous shift happened in the 1990s. With their main organizations totally broke, the strategy shifted to the lone wolf actor. Instead of coordinated groups, individuals started carrying out massive attacks. The most devastating example, of course, being Timothy McVeigh's 1995 Oklahoma City bombing. And as law enforcement notes, these lone actors are incredibly difficult to track.
When we impartially observe the modern landscape based on our sources, we see those underlying ideologies haven't just disappeared. Data indicates that major societal shifts, like the election of the first black president and changing demographic forecasts, have fueled a new racial panic among certain fringe groups. This has given rise to narratives like, quote, white genocide. And from the tragedy in Charlottesville to the tensions surrounding the George Floyd protests, the historical sources argue that the fields of racist hatred unfortunately remain very fertile today.
So 150 years after the Klan's inception, America is clearly still grappling with its oldest demons. The history of this domestic terror group forces us to look at the ongoing struggle detailed in our sources and ask the ultimate provocative question. Is the real America a white America or a multicultural plural democracy? It's a question the history books are literally still writing the answer to right now. Thank you so